So my name's David and I've been living in Armidale for about 10 years now. I went to TAS here and did some of my schooling here, and then I went on to get my degree at the University of New England in economics. Since then I've started a business, I've got married, I bought a house here, and both I and my wife love Armidale, both for its beauty and also its lifestyle and its convenience. Compared to a metropolitan area, it's only 5 minutes to and from work. You can pull right up outside the front of the grocery store every time you need some sort of supplies or groceries, and it's got a lot of the same lifestyle features that larger metropolitan areas have. I think as far as starting a business here is concerned, Armidale's got huge advantages. It's a lot cheaper, for one, to run offices in town. We've actually just opened up a new office right in the mall, and I don't think that that's necessarily well advertised to start-up and entrepreneurs. Just some of the benefits of being in this region. Another key benefit is obviously the NBN and the amazing ability that provides small businesses to do stuff in regional areas which just otherwise wouldn't have been possible. I think over the past couple of years we've seen other regional centres really grow, but we haven't necessarily seen Armidale grow at the same pace or at the pace in which it should. And if you look back through the ABS stats, you'll see that over the last decade or so, the number of larger businesses employing over 25 employees or so has actually shrunk during that time. And this is at the same time as we've seen huge stimulus in the form of infrastructure development in the form of the NBN. We've had a recent amalgamation where over $15 million has been poured into the local economy in the form of infrastructure development, including the TAFE digital headquarters, the AVPMAs coming here, the redevelopments at the airport, which should mean that we can actually fly in and out a lot more people than what we currently are. Despite all this development, we actually haven't necessarily seen a huge influx in small businesses in the area, or even larger manufacturing or industry jobs coming into Armidale. And I think the reason for that is quite multifaceted, and there's obviously many reasons why that hasn't necessarily taken place. But the next council that gets in will really be on the chopping block as far as making sure that growth continues to happen when you don't get these massive influxes of state and federal grants and projects coming into the region. So what we really need to see is not just a public sector investment into the town, but we also need to start to see a growth in the private sector. We need to push past some of the barriers which are holding back businesses or have held back businesses in the past from relocating or locating here. And I think on the flip side to that too, we also need to be proactive in trying to attract them here, and look at case studies on how other regional centres have achieved that goal. I think the other thing which often goes overlooked in Armidale is just the amazing tourism potential that we're sitting on here. We sit on the gateway to the Waterfall Way, which is, if you look at it, it'll be the most popular tourist drive in New South Wales, and understandably so. Between here, Belgium and Coffs, we've got some of the greatest range in landscape diversity. We've got incredible gorges, waterfalls, which just attract the growing percentage of the population that's really interested in outdoor and adventure activities. And at the same time, we really haven't seen local council make a real effort to market that well, or team up with other councils along this road to market that really well. I think what we really need to see from the next council, if they want to try and attract more people to pass through this region, to spend money in this region, is a very targeted attempt at publicising just how fantastic this region is. And for that, you need to be looking at other regions which are doing it well. I think there's also been a fair degree of misspending in the past in terms of infrastructure development, especially around the Central Mall area. We've seen in Armidale, the East Mall largely become abandoned, and even the central mall not flourished to the point where it should be. I think part of the reason for that is that country people expect to be able to park and have easy access to the places where they want to shop. And if you understand Armidale geography at all, you'll understand that the East Mall is just not conducive to easy parking at all, which then restricts foot traffic through that area. It restricts a foot traffic onflow into the Central Mall area and makes a lot of those storefronts actually unviable. Like, yes, there are problems with higher rent. Yes, there are problems with lack of growth in other industries in town and other businesses coming in to create the wealth effect to drive the viability of businesses in that area. But I think one of the main reasons why we aren't actually seeing more and more shops open up down there is simply because we cut off traffic and we cut off parking and thus cut off foot traffic to that area. Another issue too is over the past couple of years, Armidale's population growth has predominantly been in the pensioner and the elderly sector, and at the same time our parking times don't reflect that ongoing commitment or service to that population, in the sense that a lot of our key parking areas are still 15-minute zones, which if you've spoken to any pensioner or any elderly person in town, they'll find that that's really struggled because they need to park close to the service or the shop which they're trying to get to, but at the same time they need to be able to stay there for long enough to just allow them to get in and out and do what they need to do. So one of the key areas which council should look at in the future is just changing these areas which are 15-minute zones to 30-minute or an hour-long zones, just so people can get in and out during that time. And the reality is that we want people actually spending more time in the mall, taking their time, spending money, growing local businesses, not hurrying in and out and under the pressure of receiving a $108 fine if they go 2 minutes over time. The New England Futures Group was really a project put together by myself and a few other people to see, I guess, the level of competition or the level of standard of service for political discussion in local governments and regional areas just increase. I think for a long time there's been this disconnect between what's happening in council and the decisions made there and what the local community actually wants and thinks. And so to try and combat that over a period of time, we've really engaged heavily with social media. We've run polls on our website which have had over 400 people respond on local issues, from parking tickets and how much they should cost to things like whether or not the amalgamation should be reversed, and getting the community having an input and a say on these areas just gives insights which will sometimes go against what you would expect them to be, right? So that's part of our goal. But the other aspect of that too is I think we're at a really pivotal time in history where we've got global economic pressures which haven't been seen at least for the past 30 years of economic development around the world. We've got technological pressures in the form of automation and machine AI, and this is creating changes and pressures on local economies to diversify and change their previous models which they've relied on. And so a council that's proactive in, I guess, combating and adapting to these pressures is just going to be essential in order to see this region progress. There's a huge amount of wealth here, and there's a huge amount of wealth in this region, and there's a huge capacity to grow it and to produce more and to become really an economic hub of rural New South Wales. But that's been held back over the years through poor policy decisions, through state policy decisions, and through, I guess, to a degree, lack of desire for federal government to really stop this sort of urban sprawl that's happening in our major cities and incentivise businesses to move out to regional areas. I think the key for local governments moving forward is not only to engage at a local level well with their constituents, but also to engage well with state and federal politics in trying to attract grants to this region, in trying to really voice to them what the issues are that are holding us back from growth and prosperity, which we all want to see. The New England Futures Group is made up by a group of people from their mid-20s to the mid-30s, young mothers, young families who are dedicated to seeing this town grow. They've invested into this region in forms of housing, in forms of jobs, and they're committed to living here. But obviously to be able to make that viable for them, they need to see job growth here in the future. And so actually making sure that council takes right directions from this point forward and into the future is just so important to them that they've jumped on my bandwagon to some extent and have backed up this movement of wanting to see more young people and wanting to see, I guess, proactive attempts made at doing council well.